on sections. Next to me, so,
Yeah.
but then she
Yeah.
brought me, she said she was gonna go check. All right. Jean's order.
The September 1 Putnam Rose panel. And, I guess we start with the roll call.
Chairperson Linnea Daly.
Here.
Vice Chair Cody Abney.
Here.
Panelist Jill Bloom.
Here.
Panelist Deb Fleming. And panelist Bill Green.
I guess we're gonna start with 2-minute public comments. John Eppley.
I'm John Epley. Thank you for giving me the time to listen. I was the chairperson of the original roads committee, which came up with the plan, which we submitted to the city council in 2015. Mr. Rogers may have signed off on it, but it was not his work, it was our committee. I'm speaking to a newspaper article, and it was on the 25th of August, I believe. He said that the city elected to make the term of the bond 20 years because that should make more closely match the lifespan of the work being done. Now, I know a little bit about roads. We talked to engineers, we talked to accountants, we talked to grant people, we talked to everybody we possibly could. Not just one or two, but 3 or 4. I'm going to say that whoever gave you this 20-year is misleading the council because it cannot, no road has ever lasted 20 years. In 3 to 5 years, you're going to be going and repairing those roads. That's just the way it is. So it's not going to last 20 years. So where's the money going to come from to do the repairs on these roads? And where's the money going to come from to actually fix the roads that need to be fixed? Our plan is a 24 to 25-year plan. Every 5 years, you do a major gathering street. Every 3 years, you do the side street. You do that for 24, 25 years. Every street in the city is fixed. You're always going to have to repair them. That's just the life of the road. But at least we should be getting the amount of money that we need to do the roads, because with what you're getting with this loan for 20 to 40 years is not going to do much. It might do one major thoroughfare and 2 or 3 roads, but it will not touch one iota of the drainage. One of your biggest problems here is drainage. To give you an example, I think it's, what's that, JD? Oh, no, it's way up there. It's the worst road in. I can't think of the name. Brookside. You're looking at over $1 million on that road alone. That's over $1 million. So I'd appreciate it if y'all would go back and check your numbers, because I don't believe they're accurate. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, Cody Abney.
I'll tell you what, you couldn't ask for a better segue than that right there. All right? So my name is Cody Chambliss. And what I do for a living is help TxDOT in small cities and counties and big cities and metropolitan areas. Sorry, I don't have enough to go around them. Information on pavement preservation, right? Along with what John was just talking about. Engineers do build roads structurally, right? Last one, structure. But with our Texas heat and everything that we have, you have to do pavement preservation. Whether it's going in, shooting fog seal, whether it's going in, putting some onyx down, or doing a slurry, some kind of pavement preservation. You want to keep it sealed off from moisture penetrating into the base. All right. So what I handed you is just all kinds of information. There's a website on there, ergon.com. And click on the tab where it says pavement preservation, and it'll give you a whole slew of things. Or go to Save My Roads website, and it'll give you all kinds of information on how to preserve your streets. All right. We can go into this. I give classes on it for anywhere from 4 to 8 hours. So this is the kind of stuff that I just love to talk about. But anyway, just want to make sure that you knew that going in and doing a mill and fill or doing a chip seal just isn't going to fix it. All right. So we're going to have to make sure we're on a plan, cycle, 5 to 8 year cycle on doing some kind of pavement preservation. Whether it's chip seal, level up, whatever. So that's all I got. And you have my address or whatever. If you need anything, just give me a holler and I'll be more than happy to.
Thank you very much. Okay, we won't have minutes, so let's just proceed to the regular agenda. And we're going to have Brandon, Glenn, and Ava Selena, who will answer some questions for us. And I'll just let you run with it.
Man, maybe should I get close to the microphone?
Yeah.
Or- Okay.
We can hear you.
You can hear me fine?
Yeah.
Great. Well, thank y'all for having us here. I'm Brandon Milan. I'm with Keith Reese and Associates. I'm your city planner. Mr. Salinas is your city engineer. He cannot be here tonight because his wife is expecting a baby any day now, so he needs to stay close to home. I am here with K3's Senior Vice President, Joe Cantalupa. He is also a city planner, but he specializes in one of the areas that he's most seasoned in is capital improvements and bond programs. And we also have Mr. Ryan Thomas. He's the newest, now I'm not the newest guy anymore, he's our newest. He is our business practice lead for the transportation arm of K3's. Not only is he an expert in what we're here to talk about tonight, he also has about 30 years of experience with, what's the name of it? Wildwood? Wildwood. Where he told me he started out as an intern and worked his all the way up to city manager. So we're really excited to have him. So really, they should be sitting up here at the table tonight, not me. I've been fortunate to be involved with y'all's comprehensive master plan process, which is really kind of the higher level policy oriented aspect of things, which is intended to give direction to more implementation oriented things like this, which is you're talking about what streets to improve, phasing, and how to fund it. So with that, I'm here to answer any kind of questions I think at a higher level policy type of level. And Mr. Campbell and Mr. Thomas are here, and honestly, they're your experts tonight. And so I'm happy to help, but I'm going to recommend them a lot for their knowledge.
What if we hear from Abe? Or did you want to talk and explain what your function is for us? first?
Well,
Go ahead.
Sure. I'm Joe Kinsler,
Joe.
and as Brandon mentioned, I'm the Vice President of K3's and Associates, but I think more importantly, I'm a planner and I do transportation planning. So I help counties, actually, for state, counties, cities, develop transportation plans. And some of them are long-range plans, and some of them you would consider more like capital improvement plans, right? Just like the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years of budget. And so, depending on what you'd like to do and what approach you'd like to take, I can help sort of package it and lay it out, whether it's something you want to do to get, through the bond to help you order and better define the projects that you want to fund through the bond, or whether you want to do something a little bit longer, like more
I
of a
think
capital plan.
that's something we really need help with. But one thing that was in this agenda item was what is just to start out, what is your function as our representative, our engineer?
Well, so Brandon is your point of contact, right, as a city planner. So his job for our team is twofold, right? He's the person that is basically the company with point of contact for the city. And so, and I'm starting way up here, right in the clouds. And so when the city says, hey, we need our city planner or our city engineer, we have, I'll just pick something like that, a wastewater problem, or we have a roadway problem. Brandon's right function is to come in and say, hey, listen, we want to talk to us about a transportation issue, a maintenance issue, a reconstruction issue, or a planning issue. And then people like us show up. If next week you have a land use issue, right, you're thinking about, well, let's see, a comprehensive plan, right? Brandon's helped you through that, right? So our function is to serve as your city engineer and city planner. And in that way, we're an extension of staff. And so anything that comes up, we will help you work with. Some cities will contract with people like us to do something very project specific, but we'll get contracted to design a road, to design a water line, to write a comprehensive plan. But what the cities engage us for is to help you with things related to engineering and planning that come up. And so it's an as needed, on call sort of basis. So within the realm of doing things that we're qualified to do, our job is to help you with issues related to planning and engineering.
That's what I wanted to hear.
Sure.
You're just, when we don't even know what answers we're looking for, that's why we want to lean on you to give us the right.
Yeah, no, if I may, I'd like to add, the benefit, right, Wood Creek is, they're not the biggest city in the world. And so if you were much bigger and you were so inclined, you might have a full-time city engineer. And the benefit, though, is that we can get our hands on resources and expertise and knowledge, across several people, and you only use this when you need it. So, we do serve cities in this capacity of different sizes and shapes, and some of them use this daily, some of them use this weekly, some of them use this for one thing, some of us use them, use us for many things. So it really just depends on you. But the benefit is that you're only using this when you need us, and you have access to a lot of different, not better or worse than what you all have, but just different types of expertise and resources.
Okay, well, we're going to talk about two of those areas that we need you. Anyone else on the panel have a question? Okay, well, thank you for that overview. And so now we'll go into the specifics of what we discussed it briefly last week, but we are going to have a bond election. And we need to know what needs to be done on the road panel side or on your side. Is there anything specific that we need to be looking for? I did look at the ordinance, and it is not specific. It says for roads and miscellaneous things that are related to the roads. So it doesn't like things out to so is this going to be the province of the bond guys, or do you need your help?
Well, I think the bond guys, right? I think you're talking about your attorneys and finance people,
Those not clear.
right? And so just to be clear, I don't think any one of us have the skill or the expertise to say the bond is written correctly or not, and this is what you can and can't do. But that's your job. And I have seen bonds that are written sort of open-ended, where we're asking for $10 right from the voters to do things related to transportation, and the list is not specified. I've seen bond, votes where they've said, we've got $10 and we're gonna do these 5 roads. If we have any leftover money, we'll move to the 6th and 7th. We're helping Travis County finish up a very, very big bond. And that bond was written a little bit more strict, right? Where you gotta use it on these projects and you can't move to anything else, even if you think you have extra money, until we're sure that all these things are done, right? So I've seen all over the place, that appears as though you have lots of flexibility, right? So, and I'm maybe taking one step ahead. I assume that maybe part of the help we wanted from us is to figure out what's the best use of the money to get ready to ask your community, to fund, to provide, right, transportation related projects.
Right, but our real focus right now is getting that on done.
Right.
And we have, Mr. Evans said, we've had a lot of studies going back, particularly 2014. And there really is a consistency in what we've said, that we need to finish the corridors and then go to the secondary streets and the low bar. But we're not quite ready for that input. Hopefully, we see what happens first. Do you have any questions?
Yeah, I want to try to give this synopsis of where I think we're at right now, has been decided for council last week and where we're supposed to be paid. We moved away from the tax note and went to the farm election. So that's going to give us a chunk of money if it passes to be able to fix the streets. We're also going towards a community development block grant for the drainage. We're going to be going after that for those issues specifically. The bond is going to be specifically just for streets and getting them up to par, not to do the drainage stuff right now. That is in the works though, from what I understand we're moving forward. There's also going to be general funds, I believe, coming out to do yearly maintenance, is what I gathered from the last synopsis. So there should be money set aside every year for maintenance. This isn't going to just be a one and done thing. We know we need to have money put aside to do repairs a lot, because we're going to be right back in the same situation again in 10 years. So we know.
I don't think so. And the reason I don't think so is because with your lesser traffic roads, your repairs are gonna be very minimal.
Sure, but we're
With your
trying to set.
medium roads, your biggest expense is gonna be for oil. And with the paved roads, the reason we're paving them is because you need the traffic in order to keep the asphalt fluid and moving.
Right.
Because otherwise they crack.
So the big chunk that we're supposed to be getting is gonna be to fix all the roads as soon as we can. Because we don't wanna go a year and do this side and then a year and do that side. Everybody wants their streets done. We just wanna get the money and do it. as fast as
What
we
I'm
can.
saying is, you're not gonna get all the streets done for 3.5 and 3.9 million.
No, and that's it. So that's where we're bringing them in to kind of. Yeah.
We do have to switch to the agenda.
Right.
So we're on the following this
Yeah.
year.
So that's where we bring in priests is to say, hey, how much can we get and how far is that gonna take? So that's where we need their expertise to really break down what treatment are we gonna do for each road, how much it's gonna cost, and which roads are really the most important to get done right away. We understand we're not gonna be able to get out everything. But hopefully with the block grants, we'll be able to cover some of the road repairs with the drainage. And that's usually how it goes. I mean, that's what I work on in San Marcos right now. Our community block development grant is reconstructing the entire road and drainage and everything where none exists. So there is funding for that, so we're hoping that's what we'll push for.
Good, listen. Hope it works.
I think, if I may, I need to stop me, just come with a.
No.
It happens all day long, especially at home. So I think what would help us, help you the most, right, Because I was trying to keep count, you mentioned 3 or 4 sources of funding, right? We understand you guys got almost like 3.5 going toward a bond vote in November.
Yeah.
There's
And
400,000
for, the grant for drainage repair, that we will coordinate with the road construction.
Yeah.
And then we have reserves that can be used for smaller streets.
and then block grants.
The block grants are something we're gonna be pursuing, with some grant writers and some other.
What, do you know what the timing of the block grant is?
It'll probably be submitted for fiscal next year, I'm assuming. But I don't know how long it's gonna take to get people in, get it written, get it submitted, and what the funds are gonna be, how much is gonna be available. Going in, so, the request is going in next week.
The request for the grant?
Or the block grant.
Also, the grant fund itself is, the grant application is going in.
The grant application is being, we're sending out RFPs for administrator and engineering for the block grant. The administrators and the apply and take care of the, make it.
And regarding the amount of, the bond, that was the analysis of what we could afford, with only 2%, a 2% increase in the burden on taxpayers. So they do their calculations just like any mortgage. What can the city, what can the city pay back? And that's where we got the number from, Hilltop Spirit. Okay,
I have a question real quick. Agenda item 1, was there something more to the presentation of the Cape Reese that you guys are waiting on?
As Joe mentioned, we're here, guiding you guys in this decision-making process, and as we pointed out, y'all need assistance with identifying levels of treatment for different streets and method fire systems. So that's what we're here for, is kind of an information gathering session for us to figure out between 3 people in this room and potential other resources we have at the company, how can we begin this dialogue with you guys and come up with a plan of action, walk out of this evening tonight, knowing what the resources are and how to advise you on plan of action and step to take from a policy level all the way down to potentially looking at technical construction plan types of detail.
anything else you want to know about, that other two?
May I ask, this gentleman was just talking about a block grant. Or is that the grant we already have? Okay, so we're talking about 2 different, because you didn't mention the funding source for the grant we already have. Did you?
Yeah, you did.
Okay, I misunderstood. I just thought that you were talking about another block grant that's going in for an application.
This is
Right.
community development.
So where were the other funds now then? This grant we already have for the drainage, but that's not the road.
That's
the
not,
drainage.
yeah, that's the same grant.
Okay. So that's drainage one. And the block grant you're talking about is for roads.
It's usually for both, it's for roads and drainage.
Okay, that explains. Now, I was a little confused about where the other funding was. that you mentioned. Thank you very much.
Can I ask the dollar amount on the block grant?
That would be, it's just, it can go $500,000.
Are we applying for that amount?
So
That's my
so
understanding,
that's
yes.
money we don't have,
No, right.
correct? And we don't have a bond collection money yet. So what money do we have? Just for the discussion.
The ARPA money and.
We have the reserve money to do the repairs, and we have the drainage money from the government. And that's what we normally have. Okay. Thank you.
Just to add to that, everyone else. Yeah, Mr. Adams, in a lot of situations, the city will have offered a capital improvements plan, they will have a master thoroughfare, master transportation plan, and the city is moving forward, there's a comprehensive plan, which is definitely the highest level policy plan that a city can do, which is a great thing, because it helps to put all the different pieces together. But in this situation, and y'all are commendable, you've got a really aggressive timeline to go up the bonds in November, which is, great for your citizens, because it needs to be done. And so in this case, there isn't a capital improvements plan, and there isn't a master thoroughfare plan, which is fine, but those are next steps. But you've got stuff we need to do now, and so that's what our goal is come to this meeting, hope we don't prioritize, because we need to do is kind of go back and do sort of annotated versions of those plans for you guys, so you all have the steps, and you're able to carry this through as you complete your bond. So that's what our goal is tonight, be able to walk out with what we need to go back and do our work and come back to you all next meeting. Here's our recommendation.
Mike,
Go ahead, yeah.
yeah, but y'all have done studies on the roads already. I mean, you've got work that is done.
So we,
So it's like, okay, so knowing what you know, and knowing what we're trying to do is just like, okay, so we need to, start talking scope and project and start driving the roads and making some decisions.
so if we're okay to talk about this according to where we are on the agenda, we'll talk, we'll stop maybe we can wait. But
We need to move to item 3 in the agenda if you want to talk about it. Okay, well then. we will
If you're doing like
The next item, discuss and take appropriate action on next steps in process to schedule repairs covered from the transfer of $227,000 in reserve funds for the 22-23 fiscal year. So council and voted to move those funds, and we can use that to start doing some of the local low volume streets. And I outlined a list of those, but here is where we're going to need help with putting together an RFP, some review, we talked about that before, a review of those streets to see if chip seal will do it, or they'll need some kind of concrete reinforcements. And that's what we need your help looking at.
And I hope this comes out the right way. You have several piles of money. You have the $227,000 that council voted to put toward repairs, and you're thinking, and maybe the council did it sort of directed it toward the low volume, sort of cul-de-sac type, just sort of handful of houses type roads. And then you're seeking about $3.5 million of bond money to go after some bigger things. You have that, offering money, what was it, 400?
Well, our money is
For drainage.
well, yes, for actually not just for
Okay, but you have that pile of money. And then you're considering, or you are moving forward with going with block grants. And that's a good amount of money in 4 piles that are different sizes and shapes, right? And one of the things I think it would help us to understand is the city wedded to dealing with each pile on its own? Or in other words, are you open to
I
it?
would say yes.
Okay.
We're not gonna wait until everything's accumulated.
So,
And the funds have been set out for some road improvements.
right, and so something to
That's
consider.
probably the first thing.
Something to consider is that, and I don't know if you guys know, I've mentioned it, my wife and I lived here for about a year. We moving out to the middle of nowhere and rented in here for a bit. So I've walked, not all of them, but just about all the roads. And one of the things I noticed as even a short-lived resident is that, the condition of the roads, is greatly affected by how water behaves, how your drainage behaves. And so one of the thoughts we might have is are you better off looking at some of your drainage issues as you begin to repair those roads? So we could easily take that list of roads that council wanted to divert the money at and go out and look at the cul-de-sacs and make an assessment. Now, it's not gonna be me, we have much smarter people that do that. Is like, for example, look at the cul-de-sacs, right? That's where you tend to get, if you get a moving truck or a waste truck, they make the turns, and if they're not going as slow as they should, you know, that's why I bet you cul-de-sacs have big piles in the corners or around the edges. Well, that's where we could figure out if it's something that needs to be reinforced. Or one of the things I've seen done is they'll just go back and put 2 or 3 layers of chip seal as a way of reinforcing it. We could do that. What I don't know, and maybe folks know, is are those same roads, do they have other issues, right? Are they being affected by drainage? I would say the same thing for the higher level roads that you want to use the bond looking for. Now, we have a lot of good head start. There are, in tonight's package, you had copies of all the reports. We did last year, we went through and did an analysis, you know, that we could start with that priority. But I just wanted to throw that out is, you know, and if the answer is no, that's fine. We can work with you on however way you want to do it. But would you consider, you know, looking at the fund as a program? Or if you want to continue down the path of, let's put the $227,000 to work, you know, for those low volume roads. And it's just really, I ask these questions and raise these issues, not to try and tell you you should or shouldn't, but to just understand what your philosophy is, so we can better help you.
You're asking us that question, I have an answer, it's my own opinion. My opinion is, if we have all of these buckets of money, but we don't have a master transportation plan, I think we're putting the cart before the horse. We get a master transportation plan to find the highest use of those funds with the highest return on investment. That's my opinion.
My opinion is a little different then. So, the 14 roads that I identified as low volume, they haven't been paid because they used to be called for the premium lines. They're cul-de-sacs and they're low volume streets, but they just keep getting missed. And so here's an example of some, they haven't been paid for 24 years, 12 years, 16 years, 18 years, 27 years, 15 years. It's high time that instead of getting lost in the shuffle of a master plan, that we just say, let's just get these streets paved.
You know what, I don't disagree with that plan, actually. I know the streets that you're talking about. I've been out to study them. I'm not an engineer, but I'm not a weatherman either, and I tell you it's windy. If Cape Reese could look at the streets, the ones that haven't been paved in 24 years, these small cul-de-sac streets, if we can make a dent in that with that $227,000, and then those streets don't have to be included in the roads that were repaired using the bond funds, I think that would probably be a pretty good use for $227,000. If that can be done, if we can achieve something with the $227,000, I think that'd be worth knowing.
Can I make a comment?
Go ahead.
I agree. But if they are truly cul-de-sac roads, if it is a cul-de-sac, that cul-de-sac area with the tandem trash trucks that we have right now, coming in and delivering, I would suggest looking at doing a slurry in that cul-de-sac. And it's in that information I handed you, all right? It's a high polymer modified slurry. When it's laid down, it looks just like hot mix. The only difference is you can do about 35% more square yards or lane miles than you can by doing hot mix, all right? So that's kind of like what we did with the city of Austin. They came in there and they asked me, say, hey, we have all these cul-de-sacs. All right, it's too expensive if you want to re-hot mix them. I said, we'll do a high polymer modified slurry. All right.
I don't really think we're down that far in the granular level right now.
But what I'm saying is to save you, right, but it's cheap. All right, that's why I'm bringing it up. All right, it's very inexpensive. Everything that I put in front of you, comparatively speaking, where y'all are looking at conventional, like chip seals, right, or mill and fill, right? There's another world out there on the pavement preservation side of things where there's more tools for the toolbox.
Okay, and we can explore that, but right now,
And the wear and tear.
we would like to,
Let's stick with the agenda items. We need to get this meeting on.
Yeah, so.
This is my book cover. If I say, would you like to live here? These are some of our streets.
I live on
like
one of those streets.
a war zone.
I live in the street.
All of you do. All of you do.
And when we talk about cul-de-sac streets, in my neighborhood, it's a street that dead ends in an oak tree or a fence. There's no turnaround. The trash trucks have to back down the street and drive out.
Which is even worse, right? So,
And I think what's gonna end up happening with the election bond is you're raising taxes on everybody. Everybody's gonna want their street done. That's
That's
really
all
what
the
it's
way-
gonna come
that's
down
the way it
to.
always
And the more drainage and the more studies we end up doing, we're pushing it down the road and we're adding more costs.
Yeah.
That's all that's gonna happen.
And I'll say that you're exactly right. We do have drainage. I know of 4 serious drainage issues that need to be fixed in the city that can be tackled as individual projects. But when I read through, I don't remember whose report it was in. I think it may have been the K3's report. The drainage fix recommendation was we lower all the streets 6 inches and put in curbs on all of them. Why? I don't know where that $40 million is coming from. Probably, maybe it wasn't a K3's report. I've gotten packets now this tall. So I'm not sure exactly which report that was in. That was the only overall drainage solution that I've seen in a report.
Yeah, it is difficult because drainage, right, to your point, drainage can add a lot of money. But it's really, and I'm not trying to be one-sided, it's simply our job to point out the options,
Absolutely.
right, and then to take the lead from you. And we can, getting back to the benefit of, there's 3 of us here, but we're backed up by, 77 other people. Is that we can evaluate the different types of treatments and develop an RFP and RFQ, that reflects the methodology and the treatment that's most appropriate, even if it's by road type, and we can evaluate the responders to make sure that, they'll meet the standards and that the prices are good. So it's not, again, we're not trying to direct one way or the other, we're just saying, one way to do it would be to try and tackle some of the drainage while you're tackling some of the road. One way to do it is to just look at the system as a whole, and there may be reasons why that doesn't work. Another way to do it is to say, like you're saying, let's start with the 227 and see how far we can make it go down some of the cul-de-sac streets that haven't been touched in. It was ranges 12 to 18, 20 years, right?
24.
24, but that's, so we're just looking for direction, but sort of our part of our role is to just lay out to you that everything else being equal, these are some of the options. And this is, a couple of different paths you can take. There's no judgment from us as to whether you take one path or another.
Exactly, but an engineer's recommendation on highest usage of the funds, for example, just the 227. If an engineer got unit or wrong pricing, so we knew how many feet of paving can we get for $1? And if we could address a substantial number of these side streets, put on the column, I guess, that haven't been paved in 12, 24 years, that's a good usage, and that's a recommendation from K3's. I would like to hear it.
So let's go down that, I keep using the word path when we're talking about roads.
We'll ignore the funds.
Let's go down that path for a second, right? So let's say the direction from the committee and its, council is, agrees, just let's see how far we can make the 227 go. What we do is we probably go out and look at those side streets, for lack of a better phrase, and figure out if there's any of them that are not going to do well by some sort of treatment, right? Like some sort of maintenance treatment, right? And then, assuming that they can all benefit from some sort of maintenance treatment, figure out what the best one is, and then figure out how far it can go.
That'd be fantastic. What you just described would be fantastic.
And we did that report here. We would start with the last thing that we did, and we compare it in terms of prices and methodology and even similar condition, what we've done, you know, with other places, and we look around and just make sure that we're getting the most current thinking.
So everybody's clear, I'm not suggesting another road survey copy, I'm not suggesting that.
No,
Now it's time to get down to brass
I
tacks.
think you have enough information.
Thank God.
Yes, yeah, but now it's time to get down to brass tacks. Where are the dump trucks gonna go first to dump the asphalt?
Right.
Or the chip seal?
So remember, we went through a lot of the roads and have a priority. What we're talking about is just going out and doing a gut check on not only is that order still makes sense, but are the prices correct? Because the world has changed a lot in the past 18 months. The one gentleman talked about how much asphalt's gone up.
Yeah.
And petroleum basically.
I'm recognizing Gloria.
Yes, thank you. For those of you that I haven't met, I'm Gloria Whitehead, and I'm a former mayor. So I have just a few questions. You just presented a pretty darn good idea about how to maybe present how you're gonna spend the $227,000. That's money we do have in reserve. Just a thought for everyone and a question. If the bond does pass, do you have a plan from this committee? I think you mentioned doing a tax note. So you're gonna have money on a tax note, I would assume, if you don't get a bond passed. So has anyone thought about also adding the money that would come from the tax note into this plan?
With the problem with that. And
I know there is, but when you address it,
tax note, let's say if you replace what we've got, we get about 1.5 million with our base. Then up the line 5 years from now, we do another one. It's just a very pricey way to do it, and somehow we're trying to come up with a way that everything is changed, and then we can develop.
I understand the overall concept, and that's been going, for years. That's actually what I'm asking is, have you all considered if the bond does pass, what your next step would be? You just gonna live with the 227 and not bother to do a tax note or not go
We
forward?
could spend the 227 to fix the few side streets that are literally non-existent anymore, like Brookside.
Right.
So at least we have that fixed, and if the bond election does pass, or we seek a different funding vehicle, at least the streets that have literally washed off into the creek are fixed.
Oh, I'm not saying any suggestion at all that you have to go forward with this, as you're talking about. I'm just saying, if the bond doesn't pass, is there another way to get more money besides just maybe
It would have to be the tax note.
another, yeah, that's what I'm saying. So the idea would
She's
be,
just asking if you have a plan B.
the idea would be a plan B, how you're gonna
Well, the
finance.
tax note is actually our plan A.
Yeah.
That's our
But then
I know it was.
If we really found out how expensive it was, and
I
that's
know
what
it
we
was,
would for it.
I know that, but I'm just trying to say that if time is of the essence and expenditures of funds for engineering and for other planning, and if they can plan how to spend 227,000, then maybe a contingency, if you didn't pass, the bond doesn't pass, that there might be also a plan for how to spend a tax note. That's all I'm suggesting, that rather than come back and say, oh, now the bond didn't pass, now we have to go back and start.
we've got so many engineering reports,
And that was,
that pretty much says,
Yeah.
okay, Augusta, Champion Circle, do the primary core streets. In fact, I came up with a list of just, if the 10 streets I isolated as the low volume, average of 10 houses per street, we gave those a strip seal. Then, and we do Champion Circle and Augusta. The streets that will be left are Cypress Point, Palmer, Parkview, Park, Circle, Pebblebrook, Shady Grove, Stonehouse Circle. We're gonna postpone Brookside because we gotta do the drainage. Brook Meadow, we have a drainage issue because of Brookside. Doolittle, again, a drainage issue right there at, Judea. And, Westwood, there's 4 areas I thought that we need to fix that drainage with our drainage fund first, but it leaves few enough streets that I think is doable with the balance, let's say it takes 2 million, or million and a half to do Augusta and Championship.
And also, y'all, we're not set up today to defend the plan that we don't have yet.
Got it. Good point.
Right on.
If we can get some funds, we'll figure out how to fix the roads. If we can get some funds, we will figure out how to fix the roads with engineering direction until the money runs out, and when the money runs out, we'll figure out how to get some more.
Can I ask a question? If y'all are looking at doing the small roads, the dead end roads, which we have many of in the city, and you exhaust the 227,000, which is the maximum for our maintenance budget, and then the bond doesn't pass, we don't get any more money, isn't the perception gonna be, okay, so all of this group took care of their roads, but now there's potholes everywhere in this town that have not been touched, and the money's exhausted.
But we have the 227,000 came from reserves. There are still more reserves that can be. The council decides to release them, they can be.
They can be, but we don't even have a budget passed yet. And
So
so,
we're trying to get a solution.
This board can't defend the plan we don't have.
And what plan are you speaking of? This transportation plan?
Agenda item number
Bill
4.
item number 4, I think that's a grand idea, so.
I have one more question, because y'all took no action on item 2. Does that mean you don't support the bond?
No, that's not, so I'll answer that. And that's the simple answer.
You just elected not to take action on it.
I didn't elect anything.
Oh,
You like, I'm sorry.
I didn't elect anything. Let's carry on with the agenda. Let's not get sidetracked. Let's carry through with the agenda.
Okay,
So you just had discussion and no action period.
right, because
That's why you want to
we
put it
got
forward.
our answers from.
No, that's true. I mean, that's the way.
There is a
Okay.
way.
Coming into the way you
Let's
should.
steer, if you don't mind, we like to steer away from the debate and finish our meeting.
I'm agreeing with you.
Okay, the next item, well, we didn't quite finish 3. We will go forward with the 227,000 with the assistance of Intake.
Can we discuss what that is going to look like, and if we're going to have somebody from Cape Breeze here tonight? Are we prepared to ask Cape Breeze for something tonight for a deliverable?
Yeah.
Or recommend to council that they request a deliverable?
Right? It has to be recommended. It has to be a
Yeah.
recommendation.
All we do is make recommendations.
Would you like to take that on the back?
I don't have a motion for that. Green, do you have a motion?
I'd like to make a motion that would require Kate Freeze to come up with a list of streets and a pricing initiative for the 227,000, and how far that will get us if we were just to use the recommended maintenance.
So that's a motion to recommend to council to employ Cape Breeze to provide a list. Can I amend the motion? We're not in the motion.
First, we need a second.
Okay, second motion. I believe Councilmember Bloom seconded it. Oh,
But I do like the math.
I'll second that.
Okay.
Now you can,
Is there any
now you
discussion?
can,
Now you can,
you can amend it.
I'd like to amend the motion to insert the word prioritize for the word list.
Here's what I'd like to discuss about that. We have had inaction because there's too many factors to discuss. I think this is very simple, as long as it doesn't become a twisted path. I'm not sure 14 roads they have low access. I would like to take a look at those first. Or I'd like to know what criteria would be used.
My
Yeah.
understanding from the discussion is that you have that list of 14 roads, and I'm not putting the roads on, but calling them side streets, but side streets, right?
Yes,
And
or
I think-
low volume.
Right, but we'll call them low volume roads. I think our approach would be to take that list, and sort of the ultimate wish list for the 227 is to tell you, how we'll go about looking at them. And we're not gonna do, right, I think the point was made, we've done enough studies. So there'll have to be some sort of field review to see if we have maybe a different perspective or point of view on the order. And the good thing about your list is it says we're gonna wait on this one because we know that there's another issue like drainage that needs to be addressed, right? So those would maybe, that would cost something to do with simple ordinance. But our job is to just look at it, and give you, get the engineers to look at it, so give you an engineering opinion as to the order, and then figure out what sort of treatment or regions, methodology would make the most sense, and then how far we think the money could go down the list of this. And then when you get the list, we'll tell you what we did, what we didn't do, and what it considered and what it didn't consider, so you know exactly what you're getting. And then it's up to you guys if you wanna, move the order around. 'Cause maybe from a purely technical point of view, all the roads are here, and you feel like, well, we can't do it all here, we need to spread the road. That's entirely a policy decision.
Yeah. And
Okay.
just up to that point, can I make a suggestion on that point? I agree with everything that you just said. I would say that we get council, we recommend to council that they have K3s prioritize a list that's pulled from the pool of 14 destroyed streets. And then council chooses the order that the streets are repaved. Because I hate the pavement on my street, but I don't want anybody saying that I prioritize my street over anybody else's.
Okay, so first we need to second on the amendment, and then we need a second.
Okay, sorry.
That's okay.
But it's a separate motion, actually. Maureen.
Okay, well then let's do the amendment first, which was add the word priority.
And then, I think that from I'm assuming you want us to tell you what we think the best way to go about the rest of those roads.
Absolutely. Any recommendation you have, the entertain. That's the way I would like council to take K3's recommendation.
I think we'd have to do it, right, in order to provide you with the services. So,
Yeah.
And to be able to finish the road, maybe not just half the road.
When I put it together,
We're out of money, and stuff, right?
the list that I first put together was in 3 segments because I thought we would, put out a bid for these 4 roads, then the next 3 roads. But when I heard talking to different contractors, if they had a volume of
Mhm.
100,000
Yes.
feet, their price would go from $1.50 a foot to close to
So-
$1.
There's
Exactly. That is exactly true.
That's the other reason.
There is a way to write the request for proposals to account for the fact, again, using Ken Lupo's line, like how far down this list can we get for the money that's available?
Yeah.
Right, but now it's gonna be a big surprise, right, because the council's gonna prioritize, put these lists in order, and then we're gonna say, how far can you get down the list? Or we could do more homework and figure out, let's just go out for these lists and do, I mean, there's lots of different ways to approach it.
The volume idea is.
But generally, you're right. I mean, the more you can add is something like repaving or resealing or recording the road, the more it makes sense for them to give you a better price.
But I'll make a point on that, and I'm just gonna use a rough order number. Every time the paving company would mobilize, come out here and work, that's probably gonna be between $10,000 and $15,000 in diesel. Just in diesel, not in asphalt, not labor. Yeah, when 15 dump trucks rolling out here 3 times a day to do a small amount, there goes the 15,000 in diesel.
Rock Hollow was $60,000 mobilization fee.
And a good portion of that was diesel,
And trips.
at $5 a gallon now. It's just the point I'm making.
Yeah. But I think moving forward, without knowing we have money from the the bond yet. We kind of took that off in our minds and we kind of moved forward with what we can do now. And then we'll attack that later on. We'll do the volume stuff, I think, later on. I think makes the most sense.
So, right, the other decision you'll have to make if the bond passes is you go back to the rest of the 14 roads and do that in the next round of evaluation, or you just stick with the Highland roads. But this, we go with the path. If you stick down this path, our job is to take that list of 14, to have the engineers do an engineering analysis and list them out, and then, like you said, the council will be the ones that, like, either affirm the order or they take the order.
And Toby, you need to make a motion for that, council.
Yeah, I haven't called the word yet.
We just finished Little Mountain Road with just field. And there was 4 of the roads, I drove them off yesterday. And it looks like they're preparing to do 4 of the roads. That would be a good indicator to find out who they used. What I talked to contractors, and they didn't all commit to this, but the $1.50 or the $1 a foot included mobilization.
I would suggest that, we normally do that, right? When we design a road, we have all these different databases and sources that we keep up with and that we use to assess the projected project cost, right? And if the projects take a long time to design, like for really big things, we'll go back and we'll update the project cost to make sure that the client knows, hey, things are getting better or they're not in terms of cost. And we'll do that, right? And we do, normally for bigger projects, check in with like the contracting community to see where they see things going. And it's great to talk to the contractors, but our initial recommendation would be is that you put this out for bid.
Oh, sure.
Right? And then get it in as many hands as possible because, you want as many eyes looking at it as possible. And you will get some people that will come in real low, and you'll get some people that will come in real high, but that's our job to help you sort through that and say, this looks like a really good deal, but there's a flaw in it. Or this looks like it costs more money, but there's something really good about it that's going to get you additional another fun mileage out of it, right? So, but that's our job, right? Is to help you sort through all of that and help you make the right decision.
Best price to sell them the best value.
Right, and that's our job, is to help you sort through that. And it's also to set up the RFQ in a way that reduces the number of questions you get, to make it as understandable as possible, so the bids come in as consistent as possible. Our job is to give you estimates what we think it's going to cost, and we'll get judged on how close that estimate is to the bids that come in. That means we've done our homework.
To give you a ballpark figure real quick.
In order to speak, we recognize by the chair, please.
Okay, make it very brief, please. This is a
It's very brief. All right, so just to give you a ballpark figure on dollar amount, all right, just an idea from a contractor standpoint, $5 a square yard, all right, for a single course gypsum. You just use that as a baseline. You're gonna be, some contractors will come in a little below that, some will come in just maybe a little higher. But just to give you a ballpark figure on quantities.
The numbers I looked at were based on square footage, and it was about $2 sometimes, but $1, $3.
Yeah.
I think it'd be very eye-opening for us and for council if Kate Freeze could give us a picture of how far up $227,000 would go this month. How far it would go, that would be an eye-opener for us.
And didn't someone just have their community running chip seal?
Actually,
That was
it's right.
so, and I think your comment was, you thought the 227,000 could go a long way. Maybe I heard what I wanted to hear, so. Okay.
Right.
Are you need to vote? We need to vote? Okay, so,
Will you repeat the,
Joe's recommendation was to recommend to the city council to come up with a list of side streets that can be repaired with 227,000. And then Cody's amendment was to add the word prioritize before the list. So
I
we're
think
gonna
that was
vote
for catering conference.
to recommend to the city council to come up with a list of side streets.
Caterers come up with
Oh, thank you.
but then the order would be decided by the council.
I'm gonna make a.
Yeah.
Accept it.
Okay, let's vote on this. Okay, so we're gonna vote on the amendment,
Amendment first.
amendment first. Chairperson Bailey,
Yes.
Vice Chair Abney,
Yes.
Panelist Bloom.
Yes.
And Panelist Green.
Aye.
So now we'll vote on the motion. Panelist Green.
Yes.
Panelist Bloom. Yes. Vice Chair Abney
Yes.
and Chairperson Bale.
Yes.
I move that when council gets the recommended streets, the prioritized streets, that we could potentially pay the 227,000. That council decides on the order in which those streets are repaid.
Mayor?
So in doing that, we have the list that Cape Breeze has given to the council as they have prioritized that we can do. So you're just asking if we're gonna do any rearranging, that it's gonna be on us.
So it
But
doesn't be by the council.
The initial 14 roads are coming from this panel. So we don't need the panel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll
By
provide,
senior,
we'll provide council with the 14 streets that are the worst. Cape Breeze decides the best use of the $227,000 to make a dent in those 14 roads. It's not going to be all 14. The order in which those streets are paid, or the streets that ultimately get paid, needs to be a council decision and not in our hands. And that's the motion is voted on, right?
No, we'll vote on that.
Okay.
Okay,
Foster.
Vice Chair Abney,
Yes.
Panelist Green. Chairperson Bailey.
Yes.
And Panelist Bloom. Yes.
Okay. Item 4. Discuss and take appropriate action on the panel's task to create a master transportation plan for the city. Brendan, is that your area?
Man, I am going to respectfully defer to Mr. Cantalupo because that's his career. So,
I copy, we had in our package many master plans. Do we have a particular name of the current one? Okay,
The latest change we should be referencing.
the latest, okay, yes. What is the latest plan that the most current plan, master plan for the city that we should consider?
oh, I'm sorry, I just misunderstood the question. So, what we're working on with the council right now is completing a comprehensive master plan that is actually an ordinance approved document. So, state law, talks about the legal application of comprehensive master plans and master transportation plans. So one of the reasons why we're doing this is because the city has never adopted an ordinance-driven master plan, any kind of comprehensive master plan or any kind of thoroughfare plan. And so you've got to do that by ordinance because that gives you the legal ability to apply these documents, whether it's land use or transportation, to future development that comes into the city. You can require right of way, you can require certain levels of approval for future roads. These plans are also important as a guiding document for your existing streets. So y'all don't have any plans in place right now. So I think that's, walking into this meeting tonight and seeing that council agenda, and that's our recommendation is you don't have a document like that can guide you, you're taking a great step to do that. So, my specialty is comprehensive planning, so that's why the fortunate to be guiding guys, Mr. Ken Lupo, who was director of, Campo, and he's done many transportation plans, so he's your expert when it comes to guiding guys on how to define the scope of master plan, helping them identify how it fits into everything and the unique way to go about it for this particular community. Every plan depends on your community, whether it's big or small, and what areas of focus.
That's a question. Do you mind if I ask a question? So we've been tasked by council with creating a comprehensive master plan that's ordinance enforced for the city, correct?
Correct.
Now, is the transportation plan an appendix to that comprehensive plan? Is it included in it as a chapter? Or, I want to make sure that
Great
we're
question.
talking about the same thing.
Great question. So a master transportation plan is typically, and Joe, correct me if I'm wrong, it's a comprehensive document that deals with existing thoroughfares, future thoroughfares. It comes up with an overall framework for how transportation can occur in the city. It usually develops design for particular streets. So your thoroughfare plan is going to say, all of these streets are currently arterial streets, these particular streets are collector streets, these streets are neighborhood streets, these are existing ones, and here's where we anticipate having future arterials, here's where we anticipate having future collector streets, and here is how we would like, as defined on the map, here's how we'd like these particular streets to be designed. It's very comprehensive. It even sometimes gets into prioritization, and it can get into level of treatment. So it can get into addressing what we're talking about tonight.
I didn't mean to back up one step on my question. The word comprehensive is being used a lot. So my comprehensive plan, when you're planning for the city, how comprehensive is your comprehensive plan for the city? Is that lots of things for the city, or is it just transportation? Because we're applying comprehensive to, I think, two different subjects. Am I right? Like a comprehensive plan would be an overarching document that outlines a plan for the entire city, all of its infrastructure, ordinance driven. But a transportation plan specifically governs transportation, right?
So
And the two aren't usually exclusive, but I want to make sure we're talking about the same thing.
comprehensive plan is a high level document that will say, you need to do, it'll give direction towards doing other more detailed plans such as that.
It's more, it's skewed, but if I get this wrong, the way I keep it straight is a comprehensive plan is overarching policy and guidance. You may also think about it as philosophy. And then, so what you normally do with communities is they normally develop and adopt a comprehensive plan that sets like an overall direction for the community with regard to things like, land use, water, sewer, transportation, parks, police, and everything you can think of.
Okay, that defines the question, that answers my question exactly. So you're responsible for the comprehensive plan, and we are going to be tasked with providing input for the master transportation plan component of that. Is that correct? Okay, so if you would, let's remove comprehensive from its connection to the word traffic. Keep that in the comprehensive plan, and we'll talk about master transportation plans, and that'll keep the two separate, at least in my mind. It'll help me out. I'm sure.
So if you were writing, let's assume the comprehensive plan, there's a section on transportation. This is how we think transportation goes into a community. And someone said, which I think is what you're getting at, now we just want to write a transportation plan. Next question I think is going to be, what should it look like to place the size and shape of it?
Exactly. My next question was, do you have a template?
The answer is yes, but you're not going to think about it. The next part is you're going to need to tell us more about what you want to do. Now, Wood Creek is a certain size and shape. So if you went on the City of Buda's website and you looked at their transportation estimate, and what you see is that they got down to they wanted us to, and we helped them get down to a lot of people. Very specific about what every road in the city would look like. With cross-section, how many lanes, sidewalks, whether it was going to have, complete streets elements. But, Buda is in a much different location, in a much different situation than Wood Creek. Not better or worse, it's just different.
Sure.
But you can go, and there is a capital improvements portion for their plan. So not only lists, this is how we want the transportation system to sort of grow and serve the city. But then you can go in there and look road by road in relative order. This is what, and they're now in the process of whacking those roads off the list. Right, that they're designing improvements that were identified in the plan. They're going out to bid to get firms to design other parts of it. Then you go to Hayes County, and you look at their transportation plan, which we also worked on. Their plan is in a way much simpler because it's covering a bigger, it's covering the county as opposed to just one of the cities.
Yeah.
Their plan says this is the road system, and the philosophy with the county road system is there are some roads that are always going to be 2-lane roads, right? There's no water, there's no sewer, there's no demand. Those roads will just, the county says, we'll just maintain all these roads that are going to stay 2-lane roads for the foreseeable future. If there's an issue with a curve or a hill, we'll fix it next time we go out and have to repave it or reconstruct it, right? Nothing horrible going on. The second point of philosophy is that there are some, let's make the most out of the system we have. What 2-lane roads will eventually need to be 4-lane roads, or 4-lane roads eventually need to be 6-lane. And that's identified. No order, no cost estimates, because they just want to chip away at it little by little. The third philosophical point, which is something that may not apply to Wood Creek, is where do we need new connections? So if you open up the county's transportation plan, you see that in some places you call, RCs, we call them new connections, there's different things that we've called them over the years. And this is where, because of demand and growth that we see or saw, we think there'd be a new segment of road that needed to be constructed like a greenfield. And so there's sort of two extremes. One is very high level. This road at some point in the future is going to need to go from 2 lanes to 4 lanes. We'll tell you what the 4 lanes are going to look like later. And we don't know if we're going to need it next week, next month, 10 years from now. Whereas Buda, every road listed, this is short term, this is medium term, this is long term. And oh, by the way, we need to go back and re-scramble the issue of the list because we got, the assumptions about growth on certain parts of the city. We'll go back and we'll reorder the list.
There's an issue with the Wood Creek job. We're just stuff built out.
Well, that's my point,
I
right?
mean, it's unusual, unless there's something we keep saying.
I would also argue that you probably don't need the hierarchy that other communities have. You're not going to have 4-lane arterial roads. That's sort of,
Right.
right.
Really, where we're at kind of is our only real option is to rebuild the roads we have. The only question there is means and methods. We're probably not going to make them wider. I wouldn't think there's not going to be new connectors. I mean, really, this comes down to means and methods of replacing what we have. Does anybody else see that?
Back in 2015, a guy named Dan Rogers did a report for the city. Yeah, a really good report. He also included, it didn't get done this way, but a process of like every other year, an allocation for a larger chunk of money, maybe David Street, and then a maintenance year. And he outlined everything. So as far as the template, I think we have something in the template. But I think this was a very fine report. And I think the one wild card would be drainage. How will drainage in the future affect our long-term plans? Do we hope we'll allocate enough money that we can repair it?
A couple of years ago, we did an infrastructure improvements plan for the city of Roman. Right? You guys know what Roman is, right? It's actually not much different in size and shape in terms of constraints. And it started out looking at transportation as well as drainage. But what we realized when we got into it, and their terrain is different. They have, much different drainage issues. But we realized that the drainage issues were like significant and just about trumped everything else that was going on in the community. So although it's still called an infrastructure improvements plan, it really focused on drainage. And some of the projects are very, very expensive because, again, it's different sort of topographically and just the surrounding areas affecting the community. And so they've moved forward with some of the projects that can fix the drainage. But what they did was, they sort of did it the other way. We're gonna fix this drainage issue. While we're out here fixing it, what can we pick up? Like along the road system. So, the tail was wagging the dog, now the dog is wagging the tail sort of thing. And that's the way they approached it. I get the fact that I forget that you want to take the 227, right, I get it, and prioritize the 14 roads. I get that you want to see how far the 3.5 million will go, but I would suggest that you think about, while you're doing those two things, that you figure out, maybe instead of doing just a transportation plan, that you think about doing an infrastructure plan that marries the drainage concerns with the rest of the transportation stuff that haven't been tackled yet.
I agree with that. Actually, I think they're one and the same. All of our drainage problems are connected to a road.
Right. Yeah,
Because our drainage and it's sheet flow on streets in the creek. That is our drainage system.
and so,
Right about that?
you've taken the money that you've gotten and you've done the best, it's like when you do the best you can with it. You'll take the bond money, assuming the bond passes, and you'll do the best with that, but you're gonna have a lot of stuff left over. And that's when you get to like, the sort of thing that Mr. Rogers did, right? Like, let's lay it out and see what needs to happen. And then, the good news is if you have that infrastructure plan that marries drainage with, transportation, it opens you up to different kinds of grants, right? If you get a grant administrator on board, they can help you ferret out, like, hey, a community the size and shape and the characteristics of Wood Creek might qualify for this sort of funding, and you can tackle one of those projects.
I believe council's already going out.
No, but I'm saying you can build on what they're doing, right? They will ask you, I'm sure, what proof do you have that you have need? And you're gonna have to hand them some of what we're doing for you, because a lot of the stuff that was done is very good, but at this point, it's getting a little old, right? And the world's changed a little bit. And that's how you make the most of it. That infrastructure plan that marries, the one and the same, will have multiple uses, and one of the uses will be that grant searcher will be able to take that and say, okay, now we got something that would go up and try and see if we bring in other money.
I think the biggest roadblock I'm having is not having the transportation fund set up from council specifically for transportation. And so I'm limiting foreseeing things coming up in the future and knowing that there is stuff available for a maintenance plan. Not knowing how much we're putting aside every year, but if you can tell me, hey, we're gonna have 250 grand every year, now we can actually build a plan off of that, what that may look like. Obviously there's gonna be bigger projects, we're gonna need external funding, but just for maintenance, to know that we have some money put aside every year for a couple streets at the minimum. That's where I'm getting stuck. Just moving forward is not having that fund. And I don't know if that's something we can recommend to the council to say, hey, we need a transportation fund dedicated to this as we move forward, because now that we're built out, if we want to start doing infrastructure projects or whatever it may be, we need to know that there's going to be money in there for this plan to even make sense. There's no point in putting a plan together, you can't fund it.
We could leave that blank and hand it to council and say, you need to fill that in.
No, exactly. I mean, that's what I
But we
was
can
gonna
work
say too.
with like the Rogers plan, where he had alternatives. We've got your base to base, and what we used to do almost annual.
Sure.
But there's no dedicated funds to that, where they'll say, I would put X amount aside and this can only be used for, not general funds, transportation.
And the
funds.
other cities I studied, they have a transportation fund outside of the unallocated funds. So it's not unusual.
We should put that in front of council.
Yeah.
Tell them Mr. Shulkin.
Really, we-
Sounds like somebody needs to make a motion. I made enough motions the last meeting.
Ask council to create a transportation.
I'll second that. And that would be a budget fund. That'd be a codified.
That's what my, exactly.
And do you want to have it based on the fellow that you.
Oh, and I just think because
So it
open
sounds like you better.
I was just coming up with,
Yeah, council's gonna have to figure out what kind of percentages it's gonna make sense, and that's, it's gonna be a discussion.
I'll point out that plan, even though, it's an excellent plan. The plan was created in 2015. We're in 2022 now. His plan was a plan that had us at X location by 2022. Little or nothing has been done between 2015 and 2022, so that ship is kind of sailed. Now we have to fix streets.
well, and
It's
I was
my
actually,
take on it. But it's an excellent plan.
once we have this,
That's a general idea.
I think once you're
everything
caught
done,
up, yeah, once you're caught up, then you need that.
we have maintenance plans so that we don't have this.
We should figure out how to leverage that into a master plan, transportation plan.
Right. So we can use that for basic.
To your point, I want to agree, we have to get caught up. Or it'll be 20 more years for the streets are fixed.
Does State Freeze think it's a good idea for us to tackle the smaller streets first with the 200,000? Or do you think it would be a better idea to wait for the bond pass? And I mean, obviously none of us want to wait, but we also want to use our money wisely.
That's hard for me to answer.
I mean, I guess,
He can guarantee.
is that something
it's
you need
enough
to
fixed.
look at? That's-
And
Until
of the
it's there,
10
we-
I have isolated, 6 were on your last list.
So, I mean, I think at the beginning of that conversation before, I outlined the different ways you can approach it. It's really a matter of preference.
I see.
I mean, I can see it both ways. It really boils down to how quick, you all in council wants to show action. That's really more of a policy decision. Our job is to take that guidance and make the most of it, right? So if the guidance is deal with the 14 roads, we'll take them as far as we can. If your guidance is, let's wait until, we got all the money we can get, put it in the pile and take it as far as it goes from there.
That could be the recommendation we make to council after we get that report. If it doesn't look good, then we recommend that we wait and pull the money. Possibility.
Into the fund.
Well, we need something to look at because.
Yeah.
It's the same we use in my business, and that's you can't steer a parked car. Something to work with.
That's gonna come out, I'm gonna use that one
I know.
someplace else I'm gonna use it.
Yeah.
Well, the talk about whether it's like, do you think it's best to do it now? We talked earlier tonight about, we want to keep all those buckets separate. All the buckets are going to the same place.
Yeah.
So to say, okay, we can't spend another dime of that 227 on a side street, or we can't spend any of the 3.5 on a side street, or we can't spend any of the 227 to do something on Augusta Drive is if that's what we decide that we need to do, that's what our consultants, say, makes the most sense and is the best investment, best return on investment, then we're not really dealing with buckets, we're dealing with,
There's no legal or financial reason that we can't commingle those funds.
no, not whatsoever, right?
But city councils did have the go-ahead. They give us the go-ahead for that first bundle of money. And so,
Because we wanted to show some progress. We've been talking about fixing the roads now for ever.
As long as that-
Everybody's, so every time we fix a road, everybody goes, so let's, fix it. I mean, so the 227 was, okay, we can be showing progress immediately while we're working on other things. Because at that time when we first, talked about it, there was still, well, we could do a tax note, we could do a bond, we could do some combination of the two. So that was basically to show progress. I still think that's a good idea. I still think the council made a good decision. But if we go back to council and say, hey, Freeze, do your magic, tell us what we can do with $227,000. And you come back and say nothing. then we gotta go back to the drawing board, but we just had to, be able to make
Yeah,
it proper.
that's a great point. The other thing is, we would come back and say, listen, you're $25,000 away from doing all this sports and road. I mean, I don't know if that's gonna happen. And then council said, say, listen, since we're so close, let's figure something out and get them all done. I mean, there's lots of different things, right?
When we get that answer, the car is no longer parked.
Right.
We're able to steer a direction.
Yeah, I think one of the other concerns I've had about those 14 roads are those 14 roads all connected to a road that has already been done? Because I think coming off of a new street onto an old street, back onto a new street, we might be a little more wear and tear on something, that is not needed. So
The roads are not, they're.
yeah, but I think Kate Reese will understand, I think you understand where I'm coming from with that.
Yeah, that's an
You know,
excellent point.
if there's 6 roads off of maybe an arterial, maybe we do the arterial with the 6 roads. But you don't want to come off of a brand new road and go into a junk road right back onto it's gonna look very strange.
But all those dump trucks and the paving machine in the middle are gonna wreck a street that's already essentially wrecked.
Right.
We don't wanna wreck the street before we fix it.
And can you
It works both ways. Because
I think you know what I'm
the
talking
the
about.
wear and tear we put on the feeder, fixing the side roads.
You see what I'm saying? If you come off of Wood Creek onto a feeder that's not done, and then you got 6 small ones that have just been fixed. Now we have a feeder that's ruining more than it's actually helping. Because now you're picking up that garbage,
Yeah.
and tearing up the streets, and you have transitions that aren't gonna work
The
very
other reason to do these vertical streets, so that you wouldn't then, like Wildwood Circle, if we did that, and then later, if we did that after we fixed the little, those trucks could tear up our street.
Exactly. That was what I was
Yeah.
saying.
well. No, I see what you're saying, but it almost makes the most amount of sense to have that feeder and those done all the way out to the main.
There is one good example
That's
of
one,
that.
that's one thing.
Actually.
So instead of getting 14 done, you may get 6 done, but that whole section, that whole branch is done. We're not putting unwanted wear and tear where we don't need it.
Yeah, to the agenda item, I think we're having some good discussion about actual implementation. What we're here to take appropriate action on is the panel's task to create a master transportation plan for the city. And I asked Kate Reese earlier, is there a template for that? And we need some kind of template. City of Utah it sounds to me like they're doing it exactly right, except they're, to your point, there are very few similarities between our town mayors.
Right, and honestly, they spent way more money than you need to.
Oh, yeah.
But they've also gone into detail, like if we're to fix this road right out front, it lays out exactly how to fix that
Yeah.
road. It's a full reconstruction with, curb and gutter and drainage and everything else. That has to be done that way if you were to fix that road. That's what he's talking about, that's part of the plan.
Yep.
Well, but it's
Any
also,
upgrades.
and you're right, but it's also, in the case of a city plan like that, it's also recognizing that because that community is growing at such a pace and in such a way that the road would have to take on a different form and function.
Exactly.
I don't know that Wood Creek is gonna grow to the point where the road's gonna have to take on a different function.
Right.
Right.
So to that point, wouldn't we need recommendations per street for recommended repair method?
So,
in order to do that. Plan like that?
would it make sense for us to go back and look at like outlines and templates that might apply and see if we can sort of offer you 1 or 2?
But then, no, we already have one.
That's not this.
Well, that's not a template for what he's talking about, like the philosophy of the overarching master plan, like what is our goal with the master plan? Is our goal to, every time we fix a street, we fix it a specific way? Are we looking for future, growth? What are we actually looking at and push us towards the direction of how the street?
Because no, I'm not gonna speak for everybody now, but I'm not a city planner by any stretch of the imagination. I need to copy somebody else's work, change it and turn it into mine. That's pretty much.
What you said earlier, use the analogy of the cart before the horse. as Joe explained a lot better than I did, the hierarchy, comprehensive plan is a high level philosophical document that gives direction and says, create more detailed plans like a master transportation plan or parks and recreation master plan. So something else for y'all to potentially consider is the comprehensive planning process is almost done. And that's the role of that plan, is to give recommendation on create a master transportation plan and focus on these particular elements as you scope it out. So, that there may be value in, tasking the comprehensive plan committee to give you all a little bit of guidance and having that back and forth there, because this is obviously the next step. And make sure that let the comprehensive planning committee do their job to give y'all directions.
Yeah, I'm on the subcommittee that's supposed to liaise with comprehensive planning, so I guess I'll do that job.
Yes, let's do that.
So, the other thing to consider, right, or to think about is we're now, going to be tasked with figuring out the 14 low volume roads, right? But that you will know sooner rather than later how far the 227 can go from that. And there's going to be leftover stuff, right? There's going to be 14 roads that you might not be able to get to, plus all the other needs in the city. And between that time and whether the bond passes, that's when you could do a model, we call it the Rogers report, that says, listen, this is, you assume that the 14 roads are going to be taken care of because that's what we laid out. And what is left? And then you can throw whatever other money you have against an updated version of like the Rogers report. And then, if you want, and again, this is really preference and how far you want to go. You can get a little bit beyond just looking at the transportation improvements, and you can integrate that with some of the big drainage issues that are attached to the roads.
Yeah.
That would be a way to do it, and you'd get a lot out of that, right? You just figure out first how far the 227 is going to take you. Right, it's still account for those roads, but we don't have to worry about them anymore because at least in the first, sort of re-upping with them. And then you figure out what else needs to be done with the roads and with the drainage. And then you just start tackling them. If the bond passes, well, you get a $3.5 million head start to tackling that. If you get a block grant, whether it's $100,000, you compare yourself to $500,000, how far will that take you? But I don't think you need a bureau type plan because again, the form and function of the roads is not going to change.
We really just need a prioritized list.
You need, so Mr. Rogers' plan is, it's titled the Transportation Improvement Plan. What I would suggest you think about is asking us to figure out what the transportation and drainage improvement plan would look like. We can marry both those things together. Or you could just call it a transportation improvements plan. And then, we'll just pick up the other issues as we find them. But and it's good because you get the 14 roads going and you're laying out a path to figure out what to do with the rest of the money if and when, it comes through.
So is it possible, I think I heard you say, is it possible for us to recommend to council that they task K3s with producing a master transportation plan?
Right, we're on, right, we're city engineers and planners now, right, in my language,
Yeah.
right, you'd be asking council to issue us another task order to do that. But instead of just rushing into, council can ask us to do that. I think what we want to come back is with an outline that sort of memorializes, if I can remember tomorrow, like all the stuff that we like some of the suggestions we could, like, we're here to provide like an opinion guide. I think that's a pretty good path. Hit the 14 roads, see how far you can get with them with the 227, and then just lay out a plan for the rest of it while you're figuring out whether or not the bond will pass, whether you're going to get block grants. You can fold in the 425, right? The stimulus money, and then to the mayor's point, right? It's all going to go to the same place more or less. Then you just figure out as the money comes in or gets awarded or becomes available, you just tackle the rest of, you start down the implementation path for that infrastructure.
Jeff, is that ARPA money available for roads as well as that 227?
So when it was first issued, it was really pretty strict. And then the cities complained about what they could do with it, it got loosened. So you can use it for a little bit more. I mean, we wanted to focus on drainage and road issues with it.
Right.
But other cities are saying, oh, no, you can run this with it, you can run this with it. And good to know, but, you know, we think we're gonna stay on the same path.
Mayor, is there a deadline for using
20, yeah.
Yeah, 2024, we have to have it permitted, it has to be spent by 2026.
Okay, so you got time, somebody.
Yeah, no.
I was just wondering if we could wrap that money in with the 227 and kind of maybe have an option. From.
Well, you know, what, some of the thoughts, if I may share, you know, some of the thought was, you know, we've got money that we said, you know, we want to go to drainage, but, you know, when you fix the drainage, you gotta fix the road on top of it to do it. So, you know, take a little of this and a little of that, put it all together. So to answer your question, you know, if we get into the 14 roads and we say, well, this road, you know, it's not that big, well, that one section of it, you know, needs a little help and it needs to be supplemented from the ARPA money, then yeah, we'll just make that decision and go.
But, the 14 year, there's actually a 10 that really need attention. That's not where drainage problems are.
It was an example. This is an
Okay.
example.
Yeah, so we can just, I don't want to wait because of other decisions.
Yeah, I mean, I know the 227, we're asking them to say, okay, how far can that get us down the road? Can we also throw in the extra 400,000 on top of that to say how much will 627 get us down the road?
I think what, oh, I'm sorry, I'm still answering, I think we heard the question somewhere else.
No, I mean, it's a general, it's to anybody who really has an answer to that. I mean, but it's gonna be more of him because he needs to let us know that money's available for us to do that.
I just think that, you know, a lot of this is sort of built around, you know, a transportation plan, if you will. And that if we go in and say, okay, we've identified all the stuff that we want to do. We've got some actual money, some potential money, and we're prioritizing these things. You know, then, you know, one of the plans may be, you know, plan B may be, hey, there wasn't any bonds, so we're gonna come, you know, 600 grand, you know, at this and do the very top priorities. You know, but I mean, it's like, that's up to us to decide. You know, so it's, you know, it's like, you know, we take your recommendations, and implement them through the contract.
The
But
only reason I say that is because the 227, for sure we have. I just wanna kind of plan ahead if the bond for whatever reason doesn't go there. What's the 627? You see what I'm saying? So it's like, we already know where we can head if the bond measure doesn't get us there. So, well, yeah, I mean, but to get stuff going.
Also, regarding the drainage, at our last meeting, we talked about establishing subcommittee for, the American Rescue Act and active stormwater and subsurface drainage. So we were already sending that task to countries. And I've got Cody's name on it, I don't know, that was in there, because that's actually a technical issue that we really need your help. Aside from books.
Yeah, I think that was the Brookside issue, which is a mess, but the more I look at it, what was the other address off of Brook Hollow? Westwood.
Westwood and Brook Hollow.
Yeah.
That's the one we were going to start with.
Yeah, I didn't know that that was as bad as it was until I went and walked the whole thing from beginning to end. That's the frustrating issue in the city. Westwood is.
that's been pretty well done.
And I think, didn't we pass council last time we met with,
I think we moved it down to this agenda. I thought we had,
have Pick Freeze look at those couple drainage issues?
no, we didn't. I think we moved it to this meeting.
This, I don't see it on the agenda.
No. But, but can we move forward, but we can't do anything.
We can't do anything with that until we really know where the money's coming from. And I think
Well, we already have it.
Well, it's got to be on the agenda for us to do anything with it.
Okay, so we'll put on the next agenda, but that's when this available. Half of it, 200.
We haven't received the second half.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, 200 grand is not gonna get us where we need to go. Drainage issue.
Not even at West Twin.
I think we should wait until we have some more funds available to approach that.
Maybe we want to talk about drainage at our next meeting, so we can add it to the agenda and get it published and put it out there in public forum.
Okay.
Is there any action we can take on the report?
We have a motion. So, the motion is to ask council to create a dedicated transportation fund as a budget item. We need to vote on that. Okay, Chairperson Daley,
Yes.
Vice Chair Abney,
Yes.
Alice Bruno. Yes. And Alice Green.
That's as far as we're going. So, I think we have exhausted on. So, does anyone have an objection? Meeting adjourned.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, just one more time, I want to make sure that I walk away with clear understanding of what the specific action was regarding the master transportation plan, what the specific direction was regarding that.
We certainly, we didn't vote on it.
We didn't vote on it. And I think what I was hearing is that you already worked on the master plan. And then how that fits into we need your guidance before we know how to add that, include other transportation
And I think
plan.
your answer
So
was,
we didn't take the action.
I think,
your answer was we need to go look at what the comprehensive plan committee is doing. And so I'm on the subcommittee, so I need to do that.
even if it's unsolicited, would we be able to just give you an outline of what a transportation infrastructure improvements plan would look like?
That'd be great.
Yeah, I mean,
An outline, it won't be terribly complicated, but we can.
based on the conversation that